I'd like to call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for Monday, May the 8th. The time is 6:02. Have a roll call.
Mr. Stone? Here. Mr. Brumfield?
Here.
Mr. Yeaman?
Here.
Ms. Deering? Mr. Craddock?
Here.
Mr. Merricks?
Here.
Mr. Easley?
Here. If y'all would, please stand and join the board in a moment of silence and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Members of the board, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? I'd entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All right,
Who did the motion?
Mr. Merricks, who did the second?
I did.
Who did it? Oh, thank you. Mr. Stone and Mr. Merricks. We've got new computers, so y'all please bear with us.
And if you don't mind, if you all can speak into your microphone so Robin can hear you, so she can adequately enter it into our software.
All right, now, are we supposed to hit something here, or are we waiting on Robin?
Are they supposed to vote on this, on the minutes?
All right, Mr. Yeaman has it. Does anyone else?
You don't have a vote.
Mr. Easley,
Yes, ma'am.
how do you vote? I'll just do a roll call.
Okay.
Mr. Easley, how do you vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. 4.
Ms. Deering,
You voted for the
To
minutes.
approve the agenda.
I did. Yes. I
Mr.
did.
Yeaman,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Craddock,
Yes.
Mr. Merricks,
Yes.
and Mr. Brumfield.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. You have in your packet or on your computer the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I move they be approved as presented.
Mr. Yeaman made the motion.
I second.
Mr. Craddock seconded.
Did y'all vote?
Mr. Yeaman has it, I don't. Does anyone else have it on their screen?
No,
I voted.
Okay, we got a couple that do and
I don't have it.
several that don't.
I don't
4
either.
that don't.
I had it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Easley,
Yes.
Ms. Deering,
Yes.
Mr. Yeaman,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Craddock,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick,
Yes.
and Mr. Brumfield.
Yes.
All right, thank you. On your agenda, we have old business. The old business is case S-22-024, the dock at Smith Mountain Lake Incorporated, special use permit for marina and public garage.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
we had a closed session prior to I think you skipped over one of the items on the agenda.
On the screen.
Should be closed session.
Okay, I was getting ready to read that.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals convene a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2-2-3711A8 in order to consult with our legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel.
Second.
I've made the motion and Mr. Yeaman has seconded. We're gonna vote, I guess.
I just love technology.
Roll call for closed session. Mr. Easley,
Yes.
Ms. Deering,
Yeah.
Mr. Yeaman,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Craddock,
Yes.
Mr. Merrick.
Yes.
And Mr. Brumfield.
Yes.
There we go. Right. Where do we go?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may we have a roll call vote of the board certifying that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in that motion by the closed session motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the body.
Mr. Easley?
Yes.
Ms. Deering?
Here.
Mr. Yeaman?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Craddock?
Yes.
Mr. Merrick's?
Yes.
And Mr. Brumfield?
Yes.
So now we just proceed.
Yes. Okay. Well, just in case, we do just do a roll call vote to motion to close session, to close the closed session.
Okay, all right. I'll make a motion that the closed session be closed.
Second.
Who did the second?
I did.
I'll did the second.
Okay, roll call again. Mr. Easley?
Yes.
Ms. Deering?
Yes.
Mr. Yeaman?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Craddock?
Yes.
Mr. Merrick's?
Yes.
Mr. Brumfield?
Yes.
Okay. Would the applicant for the dock incorporated, please? Would you like to state your name?
Yes, sir. My name is Jim Gilbert. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant. I've been practicing over in Franklin County since about 1995, and more specifically, near the Westlake area for about 26 of those years. It's interesting to come back and talk about the docks at SML.
Speak in your microphone a little better, please.
Sure. Is that better?
Not really. Is it on?
May not be on.
Are we better now?
Yes.
Much.
Generally, I don't need a microphone. I usually talk loud enough. At least that's what my wife says. My name is Jim Gilbert. I'm an attorney. Practice in Franklin County. I've been practicing there since 1995. And of those 28 years, 26 of them, mainly in the Westlake area. It's interesting for me to come back and be here in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals on the dock at SML. My grandparents, I'm one of the ones that can remember the slide that used to be at the SML dock as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. And so it was interesting to me when this came across and through my office. I've been asked to be here on behalf of my client as I understand that at the last meeting, there were a number of questions that they were asked that they needed to provide some more information, provide some more detail to this board, and that's why I'm here to speak. As you know, my client wants to basically do two things. First is they want to be able to expand their marina operation by adding wet boat slips. They also want a special use permit to construct a dry storage stack. And what I'm going to do this evening is I understand that there's already been plenty of public comment. I know you know a lot about these issues. There's been plenty of stuff presented. So my goal tonight is just to go through the 4 or 5 hot topics that I picked up as I watched the video of the last meeting on YouTube. And I intend to go through those as quickly as possible, as not to take up too much of this board's precious time. The number one issue that I think was absolutely clear that came out of the last meeting was how did my client arrive at the number of 120 dry boat slips in this storage stack? And the answer that you gave, that was given to you, was that that number was backed into. Now, while that statement isn't completely inaccurate, there are two primary reasons as to how that number was arrived at. First of all, was if you'll turn to, the blue packet is my packet. I don't like technology really more than anybody else does, so I kind of do this old school and I put a packet of these exhibits together. And what I'd like for you to do is to turn to tab 5. Tab 5 is the Parker Design Concept Plan. And what you're going to see there is the location of the dry storage stack. And you'll notice that the dry storage stack is close to the water. Logically, that makes common sense. If you're going to have a dry storage stack, you want it to be close to the water. You don't want a forklift moving multi-thousand-pound boats around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet. So one of the primary thought processes in not only the location of the dry storage stack, but also the size of the dry storage stack was the topography of this property. This was an area that the footprint of this building could be put with, and really in this area, this was really the best size for this area. And it came out when you take the footprint, the length and the width, and you figure out how many levels you're going to have. It came out to approximately 120 boat slips, and that's where that number came from. In addition to that, there was a second primary reason. As many of you probably are aware already, when you construct an operation like this, you have to have sufficient restroom facilities pursuant to the VDH requirements. You have to have septic capacity because people are coming to your place of business, they need to go to the bathroom, and you have to have enough septic capacity for toilets to flush. So there's a mathematical equation that you come to as to what septic capacity you have to have under the VDH requirements, and basically where we came to the 120 slips was based upon septic capacity that's available to this project. Couldn't really go over 120 slips because of really that reason. So that's the answer to why 120 slips. Now, 120 dry storage stack slips, it sounds like a lot. Since the last meeting, I asked my client to start doing some due diligence research in regards to other dry storage stacks that are not only around here locally, but with other marinas that have these types of facilities. And while 120 dry slips at first glance sounds like a lot, it's actually a pretty small facility in regards to dry storage stacks. We basically interviewed the operators of 10 marinas, not only here in Virginia, but also in North Carolina and South Carolina. And what we found after asking these questions, I'm going to tell you what we found. The main questions we asked of the operators of all of these marinas was this: how many dry storage slips did they have? The average number of drops or splashing the boat, how many boats do they put in the water on regular weekdays, weekends, and then what I call the big three: Memorial Day, Labor Day, and July the 4th. How they control their traffic. How do they logistically do that? And the number of years of experience that each of them had, which, by the way, was most of them were more than 20 years experience operating these stacks. And just for the board's reference, the number of slips in each of these stacks The highest was 402 slips. The average across the 10 was about 210. So the average being 210, the 120 that we're talking about is actually the smallest of all the ones that we talked with the exception of one. Here's what we learned. On the smaller facilities, like the one that we will have, when you have one forklift and one guy operating a forklift, you don't have but so much time and manpower to get boats in the water. One of the concerns that was addressed in the last meeting was, what would we do if 120 people showed up all at the same time wanting to get their boats in the water? While I understand that concern, it's probably not a realistic situation. And again, here's the reason why. On the busiest of weekends, if we have an experienced forklift operator going pretty much as fast as he can go, which we wouldn't recommend because we want the guy to be safe, the fastest you can get boats in the water is about one every 10 minutes. So we're talking about splashing 6 boats an hour. If in fact we go as fast as we can go, it's probably going to be more like 4 to 5 per hour. While the larger facilities, here's something else we learned. While the larger facilities may drop about 30 in a day on a summer weekend, like on a Saturday or Sunday, and this is one that had 400 and something slips, would drop 30, 35 a day, but they got 2 forklifts running. On the smaller facilities, the drops on a typical weekend day during the summer, so about 16 to 18 weeks, on Saturdays and Sundays, is about 10 to 15 boats per Saturday, per Sunday. The number goes up a little bit, again, for the big 3, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and July. It runs up to about 18 or 20, but that's about the most that you'll have on an average day. One marina operator even told us that in his busiest day, the busiest day that they ever had, that they only put approximately 25% of the boats in the dry storage stack in the water on that particular day. And that was the busiest day they ever had at that marina. So what we have basically are boats going in the water for about 3 to 4 hours, maybe 5, because again, our operating hours are going to be 9 to 7. It makes common sense to think that most people who want to have a boat put in the water, they're going to want that done between 9 and 1 or 2. It's going to be rare where someone's going to come in at 3 or 4 o'clock and just have the boat taken right back out at 6. One of the marinas that we spoke with that gave us this information was a marina over in Bedford County. Crystal Shores, many of you might remember it as the Smith Mountain Lake Yacht Club. Not Smith Mountain Lake Yacht Club, now Crystal Shores has a dry storage stack. You'll see that in tab 6 of my blue booklet. You'll see an aerial picture. You'll see an aerial picture of Crystal Shores Marina, and in the very top picture, you see the dry storage stack in the back. There's a closer up picture of it, which is the second picture. And that second picture is, I believe, something that would be analogous to what we're talking about. Now, that storage stack holds 94 slips. So that storage set, we would be adding approximately 30 dry slips to what looks like that. Crystal Shores told us that their average daily launch on weekends, again, the same thing, is approximately 15, maybe as high as 20 on a Saturday or Sunday. The maximum that they can launch is 6 per hour. And interestingly enough, this surprised me, they told us that most of their customers only take their boat out on the water 1 or 2 times per year, that it's really no more than that. Things my client intends to do to control the traffic. There's going to be a reservation system. This is something that we learned from one of the marina operators. They actually have an app for everything now on your phone. They have an app that you can get on the marina app and reserve your time to put the boat in the water. That's important because we certainly don't want all of our customers showing up, as the board mentioned, all at the same time and getting upset with us. We don't want that any more than anyone else. So with that said, we will have a reservation system. When a customer signs the agreement for us to store the boat, they will be well informed up front that they need to make their reservation well in advance. This will be like tee times on a golf course. If you try to play golf at a nice public golf course on a Saturday, good luck if you don't have a tee time. This will be the same thing. Our clients will know not to show up if they haven't made that reservation. In regards to parking, keep in mind that the boats are already in dry storage. There's not going to be vehicles coming with trailers attached to them. You'll see in the concept plan, which is under tab 5 again, you'll see that there are 30 parking spaces that are near the shoreline, that are right there near the marina, and it's really hard to see because it is right there at the bottom and it's fine print. I apologize for that. I could not make it any larger. But there's 30 parking spaces that are dedicated to this dry storage stack. Our written lease with our customers will tell them that they need to strictly observe the no-wake zones. Now, one thing that I would point out that I think is an important analogy is public boat ramps. Ours isn't a public boat ramp, but there is a public boat ramp that is the Anthony Ford number 4 boat ramp. If you go past our place and make a right, you have a public boat ramp there. And so I started doing a little research on public boat ramps. And under the DWR website, you'll find this information right on their website, virginia.gov/boating/building-boat-ramps. They say that if they have one launching lane, that they only need approximately 30 to 35 parking spaces due to the turnover that they have at the boat launch. That one launching lane can accommodate 80 launches per day. I think personally that's probably pretty high, but that's not even close to where we're going to be. We'll be most likely right along the averages of every other marina that has one of these dry storage stacks, and we will control it based upon a reservation system. I mentioned to you the no-wake buoys. You'll see on tab 7 of our documents that we have the approval from DWR for the no-wake buoys. My understanding is that the buoys are in place. Both buoys are in place. They are in the location that we were told to put them by DWR and TLAC. They gave us coordinates, and that's where they are placed. They are, my understanding is they're inspected once a year around April. I don't know if the inspection has occurred this year or not, but we've not heard anything that tells us that they're not in the proper location. I've already addressed parking, road maintenance. This is probably one of the hotter topics is involving Locust Lane. So I want to give you a little bit of history on what I found in regards to Locust Lane. And this information is just information I've pulled right from the land records right here out of the courthouse here in Pittsylvania County. Locust Lane is actually shown on a survey for H.W. Lumpkin in November of 1962. And then when the Munsons had the property, there was a road maintenance agreement that was entered into in 1986. And just for your record, that's at Deed Book 788, page 416. This road maintenance agreement was sort of a unilateral agreement. Richard Munson signed it on behalf of the owner of the property where the point is, and Roberta Munson signed it on behalf of Smith Mountain Dock. So they entered into this agreement on behalf of these properties, but what's important is that it reaffirmed that there was a road there. Smith Mountain Dock agreed to maintain the roadway in a reasonable and passable condition for normal vehicular traffic, and this agreement was binding upon all of their heirs, successors, and assigns. So the 1986 road maintenance agreement, there is a road maintenance agreement for this property. It was recorded in 1986, and it's still in the land records, binding upon everybody that owns property there. Now, with that said, is it the best worded road maintenance agreement? It's a little older. It's from 1986. It simply says that they're going to keep the road in passable condition for normal vehicular traffic. What my client proposes is something a little bit different. We propose putting of record a formal declaration of road maintenance. It's in your packet that is under number 8, proposed new maintenance agreement. Yesterday, I had the pleasure and opportunity to speak with Mr. Smitherman on the phone for approximately 45 minutes, and we talked about a number of issues. And the phone call was cordial. One thing I don't like about our society is that people, when they disagree, they're not cordial with each other. Our phone call was pleasant, cordial. We agreed to maybe disagree on a couple of things, but one thing that I heard, and my client heard, was that despite the fact that the declaration of road maintenance agreement that we're proposing is a formally drafted document. I didn't draft it, another lawyer drafted it. To me, it looks like a fairly standard road maintenance agreement that folks use when they're trying to get a loan on a property and they need a road maintenance agreement. One of the things I took out of my conversation with Mr. Smitherman is that we needed some more substance in the road maintenance agreement. So I went back to some road maintenance agreements that I had prepared over the years, and you'll see in tab 8, the very last page of tab 8 is what we propose to additionally insert into the proposed road maintenance declaration that we already have proposed. And so this paragraph adds a provision that defines road maintenance. And it says the term maintenance and repair shall include but not be limited to repairing the road surface, adding stone, clearing obstructions, grading or scraping the road as necessary, cleaning or recutting ditches as necessary, trimming brush along the roadside, removing snow, unplugging or opening culverts or drain pipes, and performing any and all other necessary work required to maintain the road in a condition that will allow for reasonable and safe access of standard passenger vehicles. Of course, this is not an obligation for any party to have to upgrade the road to a superior condition, just simply a declaration that the parties will maintain the road at least in its current condition and do those things to make that happen. One of the concerns I understand is how would this be enforced? I think that we've got, if not dozens, hundreds of pictures of Locust Lane. we can look from video and pictures as to what the status of the repair of Locust Lane is right now. And if my client doesn't, if this Board of Zoning Appeals says one of the conditions we're going to put on you is you record and execute this declaration along with that additional language, it would be silly for my client not to maintain that road, because they're getting ready to invest a ton of money into this marina based upon a special use permit that could be terminated if they didn't comply with the conditions. I don't think the county would have to send an inspector down there to make sure we're doing it, because I'm sure that if we don't, you'll get a phone call. So this is how we propose dealing with Locust Lane. In regards to the construction of the dry storage stack, one of the conditions that Ms. Ragsdale had suggested in the last meeting was that there be a separate entrance off of off of the state road, which I think is Route 626. My client strongly believes that they have the right to use the road that has been on their property, that is located on their property, and has been used by their marina since the 1960s. Notwithstanding, if this BZA board believes that there should be some kind of separate entrance for construction, the construction of the dry storage stack specifically, then it's something that they would certainly be open to and consider, especially for the mainly, well, and primarily only for the dry storage stack. In conclusion, I have some other documents that are in this table of contents in this blue packet. One of the questions involved AEP. We have a letter from AEP here. We have a certificate to operate from VDH. We have the, as I mentioned, the DWR buoy approval, concept plan. And you know, the main thing that I would suggest that you look at also is the before pictures. Look at the before pictures under tab 4. And I would challenge anybody, I've been out to the property a couple of times now. I would challenge anybody to say that the property doesn't look better than it did before. I think my client's done a wonderful job cleaning it up. So here in conclusion, this is what we suggest to the board. We suggest approval of both special use permits. We would like condition number 1 to state that the applicant will execute and record the declaration of road maintenance agreement as proposed with the additional paragraph. Condition number 2 would be Locust Lane not be used as a construction entrance for the construction of the dry storage stack, but instead a separate entrance for construction of the dry storage stack will be located off Route 626. And of course, the other two, the applicant stays in compliance with the regulations of VDH, and the applicant stays in compliance with the regulations of the AEP. We ask the board to approve both of these requests. If, however, the board is inclined not to approve the dry storage stack, we'd ask you to separate them out and approve the special use permit for expansion of the marina so that we can do the wet slips. Thank you. I should ask, does the board have any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Gilmore?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Smitherman here? Would you like to speak for the group for 3 minutes, sir?
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman. The petitioner got 27 minutes, and as that I'm speaking for a group, would you allow me to speak for 10?
Great.
Thank you, sir. It's a frustrating position we find ourselves in, especially limited to the amount of time that we get to speak with you, and our interactions have been limited, and we're not really sure why. This is a legislative hearing, not a quasi-judicial hearing, so you're allowed to speak to us at any time to gather information. So I don't know if that's a misinterpretation between our attorney and your attorney, but this is a legislative hearing, not a quasi-judicial. The road maintenance is not an issue for us. The road is in better shape today than it has been in 3 years because we've been maintaining it, most particularly the part between Smith Mountain Road and the entrance to their property, which was maintained just 2 weekends ago by us. And they've not maintained that road since they've acquired it. This is an issue about zoning. This is a residential zone. The applicant has not proposed any residences on this property, only commercial. And in the beginning of the Division 7 of your ordinance that articulates what the RPD zone is, it talks about a unique living environment. The applicant has proposed no uses that include living in any way, much less a unique living environment. We very much care about the residential neighborhood, the RPD zone, the sanctuary, which is selling lots at $700,000 on average, which is an RPD zone across this cove. Tanglewood, which is an RPD zone, which is complied with the RPD zoning, just like Mr. Plyler has in the sanctuary. Our neighborhood of Locust Lane is also a residential zone. And this property, ladies and gentlemen, is a residential property and has been a residential property since 2006. This does not comply with your comprehensive plan, and the conditions that have been proposed do not mitigate the harm it will cause to our neighborhood. We were very impressed with your consideration of the Hillendale Solar Farm and all the solar farms that you have dealt with and the quality of the presentations that have been provided. We deserve that same level of quality. The presentation provided this evening in this blue book, if you'll notice on tab 5, that's a drawing from September 2022. There have been numerous revisions to this plan since September 2022, including the parking referenced by Mr. Gilbert. And I had a great conversation with him yesterday, and I wish Mr. Gilbert was involved 6 months ago when this began. I think we would have had a much better outcome being able to talk, because we want this marina to thrive. This is a critical element of our community, and we love it. All of us used to go down there, see the carp, eat, do all these things, but we're not welcome anymore because there has been an adversarial relationship between a group from Raleigh that has come here and bought something, and they're trying to ram a plan down our throats, down your throats, that resembles their plan at their marina, which they surveyed in Lake Wiley, South Carolina, and Lake Norman, North Carolina, where they're doing the same thing. And it's called monthly recurring revenue. You stick up some storage, you throw some boats in there, you get month-to-month revenue without having to hire people, and you're able to send money back to Raleigh. That is what is happening here. They proposed to use a new entrance. Ms. Ragsdale recommended that they use a new entrance, so not to use Locust Lane's construction. They do not want to do that. We spoke with their attorney yesterday. We asked that the road be brought to VDOT standards and that we participate financially in that construction, and that the road extend the entirety of their property, which is 550 feet beyond which their road maintenance agreement outlines, and we would financially participate in that. The response was, my client does not want to spend that kind of money, because that's what we're dealing with. This is about quick revenue and sending it back to Raleigh. The economic impact to this county is far less than it would be if it was residential. Mr. Plyler, $700,000 on average for one lot. That's where the money is on the lake, not rental units, just like self-storage units. That's what these are. Self-storage units for boats. The boats will be registered at the home of the owner, not in Pittsylvania County. I can tell you the tax rate outside of Pittsylvania County for personal property is far less than within Pittsylvania County, especially in North Carolina, where most of the clients that use the lake on this side of the lake, the south side of the lake, come from. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I would like to comment about the process. I think for no other reason than the process that's been followed, this proposal will be overturned by the circuit court. It has been a helter-skelter, knee-jerk process from day one. It started as a request for a SUP for Marina. Then it was hand-scratched out and became a application for 2 special use permits in a single application, which I have a master's degree in public administration. I've been a zoning administrator. I've never in my life seen 2 special use permits on one application. The applicant did not submit their materials by your stated deadline and have still submitted new materials like a road maintenance agreement as recently as this evening. This is not a fair and transparent process. Our neighborhood has not been afforded the opportunity to review the materials or converse with you about our very specific and legally defensible reasons that this proposal does not comply with the Pennsylvania County zoning ordinance. We respectfully request that you deny this proposal this evening. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity to speak.
Members of the board, you have heard from the applicant and you have heard from the community. So we now have to make a decision as to whether we entertain a positive motion or a negative motion. The staff recommends that we approve it with 5 conditions. Those conditions be that Smith Mountain Road be used as the sole public access for the property. Locust Lane cannot be utilized as a construction entrance for any future construction plans. The current no-wake buoy must be maintained in the cove, and the applicant must apply and exercise reasonable and good faith efforts to secure an additional no-wake buoy. Must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Must remain in compliance with AEP regulations. So those are the recommendations from the staff. And I think what I would ask the board is if someone is of the opinion that we read a positive motion, that we can consider these 5 recommendations and add to them as the board sees fit. Comments?
So I can comment without making a motion? Is that what you're saying?
Go ahead, if you'd like to make a comment.
Well, I studied this at length and trying to understand. I still have reservations about who is responsible for the safety of the neighbors and the people in that little cove with the number of boats. And there may not be a lot of boats, but I'm not a boat person. But as I mentioned last meeting, common sense tells me that little narrow cove with not only what's happening at Sanctuary Bay, but also with the people who already live there, is a problem. So I'm worried about safety. It seems like AEP has no interest in safety, or the wildlife people, or and even the health department. I don't know, but I just don't see it anywhere. I think it's personally, I'm concerned about the zoning of that lot of land. And this is an opinion, and it's so vague. Everything is so vague, but it's a residential neighborhood, and this will adversely affect. Now, what happens on the water is one thing, and I have no problem with that. But what happens outside of that, I got a big problem with it, and so I cannot support a positive motion for this storage. That being said, I will support the expansion of the marina and the wet slips, but not the storage. So there, I said it.
Comments?
Mr. Easley, could you read those recommendations again?
I'm sorry.
Could you read those recommendations again? I didn't-
Okay, the recommendations are, this is staff recommendations, and of course, we can add to or take away from if we go with a positive motion. Excuse me. Smith Mountain Road, which is 626, will be used as the sole public access for the property. Locust Lane cannot be utilized as a construction entrance for any future construction plans. The current no-wake buoy must be maintained in the cove, and the applicant must apply and exercise reasonable and good faith efforts to secure an additional no-wake buoy. Must remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations, must remain in compliance with AEP regulations. And that's the staff recommendation for the special use permits that have been requested. I'm concerned with the public garage. I cannot really understand why a public garage is needed for a marina. Again, I don't know a lot about marinas, but a public garage is extremely broad, and it could turn into a used boat lot. Ma'am, sir, please. I'm sorry. My comment was I'm concerned about a public garage. Any other comments?
I do have some comments. I believe in Pennsylvania County, it's very important that we support businesses. But on the other hand, I think it's very important that when a business, which this business has been in operation for a number of years, and I remember going there to the water slide when I was younger. But I believe it's important that a business be part of the community, that they be good neighbors. And from my listening to this case, I have been quite uneasy because of I just put it out there, we have attorneys and we're fighting. What I don't understand is we have a deeded right-of-way to the property. It's been used for years. What I don't understand from one side of the business, from the business side, is why not upgrade the road? Why not make it nice? Why not make it nice for the community? Why not make it nice for the public access? All of these conditions. Myself, personally, I feel uneasy about this particular case. But normally, I'm a big supporter of business, but the right business that's right for the community. And I believe this business can be right for the community. But I don't know if I'm making myself clear there. But I'm just uneasy because I don't sense that this business is working with the community here in Pennsylvania County.
Any comments, Mr. Stone?
Mr. Chairman, I have expressed my concerns before about the details that we're receiving on the marina, and just having the information that we need to make a decision. I feel like it's lacking to make an approved motion.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't.
The information that we're receiving, I do not feel it's easy to make a decision in favor of the marina with the information that we have.
So is it of the opinion that we read a negative motion?
How can we allow the wet slips and how can we separate? How can we separate? Or can we?
I would read a separate motion on the SUP for Marina. I'm sorry, I think these microphones are acting up a little today. I would read a motion on a separate motion on the Marina and a separate motion on the public garage.
Okay. All right.
But now, which motion would include the dry slips? Because I think
The garage.
the garage is what's tied to the dry slips.
Yeah.
Please. I can't argue with that.
My understanding is the public garage is the dry rack storage. Yes, sir.
But we only have one application. I agree.
But we have one application. Let me ask this question for my knowledge. If we deny the special use permit for the marina and the public garage, when can they come back and reapply? Is it 12 months?
12 months.
Okay, is there a way for us to make it less than 12 months?
I believe you could, you have to look at your zoning ordinance. You could specify in that motion if you wish, but I can't tell you off the top of my head whether you could circumvent the zoning ordinance. I know you can in a withdrawal. You can specify that there's less time, so you could specify it in that motion.
But we had already closed the public hearing, so we couldn't, they could not withdraw their application.
I would entertain a negative motion.
All right, I'm going to read a negative motion, and then we will vote on it. Whereas the dock at SML LLC has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a marina and public garage, and whereas we find substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will be changed thereby, and that such use will not be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be denied.
So moved.
Who did? All right, we've got a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? Got a second from Mr. Stone. You going to do a roll call on that, Robin? Okay.
Mr. Easley?
Yes.
Ms. Deering?
Yes.
Mr. Yeaman?
No.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Craddock?
Yes.
Mr. Merrick's?
Yes.
Mr. Brumfield?
Yes.
Okay, so the negative motion was passed by a 6-1 vote. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all.
Oh, it went away. Okay.
We'll take a 5-minute break, let everybody go that needs to go, wants to go. We will open the public hearing, case S-23-003, Christy Hicks, for the special use application for summer camp. Ms. Ragsdale, your report.
Case S-23-003, Christy Hicks has petitioned for a special use permit on 13.47 acres located on State Road 724, Mill Creek Road, in the Westover Election District to allow for a summer camp. On April 4th, 2023, the Planning Commission recommended by a 7-0 vote with no opposition that the special use permit be granted. Staff summaries enclosed in the board packet. Mr. Chairman, Christy Hicks is here to represent the petition.
And Ms. Hicks, before we go any further, I'm supposed to read a zoning precept, so I'll read that so it'll be on the record. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to Article 5, excuse me, Division 7 of the Pittsylvania County Zoning Ordinance, we, the Board of Zoning Appeals, have been empowered to hear and decide specific applications and appeals in support of said ordinance. In accomplishing this important task, we are charged with promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Pittsylvania County. We must ensure that all our decisions and recommendations be directed to these goals and that each be consistent with the environment, the comprehensive plan, and in the best interest of Pittsylvania County, its citizens, and its posterity. Anyone here to speak to the board other than the applicant regarding zoning cases will be limited to 3 minutes. Welcome, Ms. Hicks.
Okay, my name is Christy, and I'm not a lawyer, but I am a teacher. I've been teaching it for 20 years with Pittsylvania County. I currently work at Stony Mill Elementary School, and I've wanted to do a summer camp for a few years. I've watched children every day. I know the Planning Commission have already heard this, but students throw away half of their lunch on their plate every day. I see it, the vegetables, they don't eat them. They don't know how to garden, and there's a lot of fundamental things that we're not teaching our children in school, and it's necessities that we all need. And you and I probably grew up, at least I did, on a farm where I knew how to, raise a garden. And I like to teach children horticulture and plant propagation. Have a little chicken coop. I teach them how to. I know a person actually in her 20s that didn't know that. I found out recently did not know that an egg came from a chicken. And that might sound ludicrous, but that's today. This is 2023. And I'd like to just be a part of a children's education. I want to do this, as a volunteer. My summers are really free. Well, they're not really free. I've got a lot of work to do, but I'd like to just give of myself. And I just want to, I'm here to represent children and try to help them with, just to learn things that they're not taught in school. And the property that I have hasn't been lived on in 70 years or 80 years. It's very natural. It's got a creek going through it. The old state highway goes through my property. At one time, Beaver's Mill was located on my property. It burnt down. It was built in 1798, burnt down in 1812, and it was reconstructed on an adjacent property, but there's nothing left of it. We did excavate the mill wheel back about 2004. We donated it to the museum in Richmond. It was 8 foot beneath the ground. It was one of the largest mill wheels ever found in the United States, as far as we know. At one time, it was 15, I think it was, if I'm telling you right, it was 15 foot long, and it was 8 foot in diameter, and the top portion had burnt off, and Danny Ricketts and we do genealogy together, and I was in the courthouse one day in Chatham, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm researching genealogy, because I'm really into family history." And probably any of you in here, if you're from Pittsylvania County, if you could tell me the name of your great-grandparents, I could give you your generation back 200 years, because I've got 90,000 names in my database for just Pittsylvania County alone. My grandmother lived to be 100 years old, so she told me a lot of information. And I just want to pass on what I've learned to students, and I want to connect us together and do it, by taking kids back to the way things used to be. When, we believed in recycling, and on the property that I have there on Beavers Mill Road, I have thrown away truckloads of bottles and garbage that's thrown out on the side of the highway, and I do it on a daily basis on my property, because children nowadays, they don't even taught to recycle, I don't think. And I think there's fundamental things that we need to teach children that they just don't learn in school, and I know that because I'm there. And I'll try to comply with, any kind of recommendations you have for me if this is meant to be. I work there all the time doing a garden for children. I've had some participants already helping me getting started. So any advice you've got to give me, I welcome it.
May I have some questions for you?
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Ms. Hicks?
I just think it's wonderful what you're doing.
Well, I believe in power. I believe in prayer, so I just ask if it's God's will to be done. And let me tell you something else real quick. Over the years, I found these creek treasures. They just wash up on the side of the bank. And if anybody's got a creek going through their property or river, you know how you always find things. Well, this past summer, there's an application in 1812 with Pittsylvania County to have a dam rebuilt for the mill site on my property. And they built a dam 14 foot high, and the beams have always been in the water until we had a flood about 2 years ago. And when we had the flood, it took all the beams out of the river. Well, anyway, I found one on my property a little ways down the river, and I thought, my goodness, I would love to have this huge beam because it's in perfect condition. I'd love to have it as an exhibit where I could show those children the hand-notched, places on the beam. But it probably weighed 1,000 pounds. It was under the water. It was 10 foot long, and it was just beam on myself. But I took an old board, and I actually got that beam out of the river. I dragged it up, and now I probably took it 500 or 600 feet. So now I've got that beam, and I said, Lord, if it's your will, I'd like this to be part of my property. It's like a cornerstone to show my kids this is what was made in 1792, and just to teach them to be conservative and not waste. And that's why with Emily, I've told her I'd like to use a lot of I've been working with Tom Yates and Climax. He gave me an old building I could tear down. And his father and uncle built this building 85 years ago. It's in perfect shape. And of course, I couldn't have moved it because it didn't have a foundation under it. People back in those days, they had dirt floors. So they just built the structure. But it's in really good shape. And I've got the boards now under a shelter. And I'd like to somehow or another reconstruct older buildings for children to see how people used to live. And I've got two good friends now in their 80s in nursing homes that told me about when they were little, during the wintertime, snow would come through the cracks in the wall. Kids today can't imagine that. And I don't know, I just think people would be more appreciative of what we have now if they know where we've come from. And you can't show them unless you realistically create a place of that environment. And I'm an ESL teacher, and I've been to Mexico 3 times, and I've been to Mexico, I've slept on a dirt floor on a mat, I've had insects crawl all over me, and I've been in a bamboo hut, stay there at nighttime where you could see the cracks of the wall. I've used a public bathroom where it was like 3 blankets tied up to 3 ropes, and they blew in the breeze, and there was cracks beneath each blanket. And when you go to Mexico, and you've never been there before, and you're eating authentic food, and this is a community bathroom that everyone uses and everyone can see you, if you're not careful. I've been there, so I know what it used to be like for people who lived a long time ago. And I don't take for granted anything that I have now. God has blessed me. And I want to give back. I could go on. I want to give back what I've been blessed with. And I'm not rich or anything, but I'm willing to give all that I have, everything that's in me to help the future. Because you know what? The people that we teach today it's our country for tomorrow. And we're the ones who hold that in our hands, what we can do with them, what we can teach them.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
What are the ages of the children, and how many will there be?
Ages 8 to 12, and probably right now I'll start with 6 to 12 at a time. I'd like to do something a lot greater than what I'm starting out with, but I'm just got a few teachers working with me, and I'm starting out from scratch. And, Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'm starting small.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
We may have some questions for you in a minute. Go ahead and have a seat if you'd like. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? There's not, sir. Nobody here. All right. Then we'll close the public hearing. The time is 7:34. Comments?
I think it's a great thing she's trying to do. Kids today, when I grew up, you ate dirt, and kids today don't eat dirt, and they need to. A little dirt won't hurt them, and so I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing. Keep those hands off of those phones and everything else, and put them to work. And I think it's a great thing. So I think it's a great thing.
I think it's a great thing also for the
Okay,
I agree,
so
Mr. Chairman.
I'll read it. Now, the staff has recommended that Mrs. Hicks remain in compliance with all applicable uniform statewide building code regulations and remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Are we good with those two recommendations?
Yes.
Then I'll read a positive motion. We'll see how it goes. Whereas Christy Hicks has petitioned the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special use permit for a summer camp, and whereas we find no substantial detriment to adjacent property, that the character of the zoning district will not be changed thereby, and that such use will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and whereas there are no significant adverse effects upon adjacent property that cannot be mitigated through conditions, I move the special use permit be granted with the following conditions. Remain in compliance with all applicable uniform statewide building code regulations. Remain in compliance with all applicable Virginia Department of Health regulations. Do I have a motion, positive motion for that?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got Mr. Yeaman,
second.
and a second, Mr. Brumfield. You going to do a roll? I'm not, mine hasn't changed.
Mr. Easley?
Yes?
Ms. Deering?
Yes.
Mr. Yeaman?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Craddock?
Yes.
Mr. Merrick's?
Yes.
Mr. Brumfield?
Yes.
Your motion is carried unanimously. So congratulations and good luck with your new program. There being no further business, this meeting is
Mr.
adjourned.
Easley, I think we skipped over new business.
Oh.
We did old business, but I think we went into a break and came back and went straight to the public hearing. So I will just point out to you that we will have a June meeting. We have 3 cases for June, all special use permits to allow for the placement of mobile homes. We will not have a July meeting, but we will have our zoning ordinance, our bi-monthly workshop for the zoning ordinance update in June. So we will be sending out a reminder for you all for that.
Okay, thank you. Apologize for jumping over that.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of this body?
Move adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for your help.